So to start, you'll need my template, which you can download from my Pinterest, and that will be linked in the description. And once you open that in Photoshop, you can do what we did last time, where you'll make a selection of the inside of the template and copy and paste those onto new layers, so you can use the clipping mask tool. Or with this one, I started off with clipping masks, but eventually, just for speed, I ended up just positioning the photo how I wanted and then cropping it, so you can do that here as well. Once you have the image positioned how you want, you can either move on to the next step, or you can do what I did with this Polaroid in particular, and you can edit it so that the person looks more three-dimensional, like they're coming out of the frame. And I thought that would look good with this pose in particular, but you don't have to do it with all of them. This next step is by far my least favorite part, so if you come up with any shortcuts that you find helpful to expedite this process, please comment them, because I couldn't come up with any, even though I made 9 of these Polaroids, so I would really appreciate that. But what you need to do is make a new layer and then go down to the bottom of the template to the swatches panel that I made and make a rectangular selection on each swatch, and then I drop colors from the photo into the swatches panel. And I kind of like to do this so that they form a gradient. You can do them in any order you want. I just think that that looks sort of the most visually appealing, but you can use the fill tool for this, which is Shift F5 on a Mac. Do not do what I did many times, which is Shift 5. That turns the opacity to 50%, and that's not what we want to do here. So when you're done filling in all those swatches, as well as the 2 in the other swatches panel, you can make a new layer underneath that layer and fill in the sort of background of the swatches. And I like to use sort of a lighter color so you can really clearly see all of the swatches. In some of these Polaroids, I did an entirely different color that didn't show up in the photo because most of the colors from the photo were already in the swatches panel. In this one I didn't. It's kind of up to you, but that is what you'll need to do next. For the next step, you can kind of just go around filling in the other panels with whatever colors and in whatever order you want. The only thing I really consistently did was for the Photoshop logo and the minimize, full screen, and close tabs at the very top. I like to use the same 2 colors, but because the Photoshop logo in real life is a dark background and then the PS is in a lighter color, I sort of followed that color scheme, and then it was just reversed for the close, minimize, and full screen. I didn't do that at first with this Polaroid, but I eventually changed it later. But once again, it's up to your personal preference and what you think looks best. Once you're finished coloring in all your panels, you can go to the template layer and duplicate it and place that on top of all the colors as well as the photo you're using. And hopefully when you do this, it will be transparent. If it's not, you can comment that and I'll try and fix it. But hopefully it will be transparent, and so when you lock the transparency of the layer, you'll be able to just color in all the lines so it looks better with the colors you picked for the panels than having it just be plain black. Something else you can do while you have the line art layer locked is to color in the icons to the left of the frame, and I like to use a different color for each one so that these also form a gradient, and choose a few colors from each area of the color gradient in the swatches, if that makes sense, and just color those in accordingly. So when you finished all that, you can cut the colored frame and paste it onto a new layer, which you can then merge with the photos and all the other colors. And once you finish with that, you can make a new layer and add sparkles. And this step is totally optional. You'll see I didn't even do it with all the polaroids because it also kind of takes a while. But what you'll need to do is, on that new layer, take a hard round brush. I use my ballpoint pen brush, but any hard round brush will do, and adjust the size as you make sparkles of different sizes around the frame. And when you're satisfied with all the sparkles and you have a nice variation where there aren't too many all in one spot or there aren't too many of just one size, you can copy and paste the sparkles onto a new layer and use motion blur. And I set the length at about 120, but you can totally change it depending on what you think looks best. It will also probably depend on the size of the sparkles, but you should do that and set the angle to 0 degrees. And once you're satisfied with how the first motion blurred layer looks, you can copy and paste the original sparkles again and do the same thing, but this time the angle on the motion blur should be 90 degrees, so it's perpendicular to the other motion blurred layer. And then you can experiment with Gaussian blur, the smudge tool, and just adding more sparkles with your hard round brush to make it look the best it can look. And once you're happy with that, you can merge it with the Polaroid and use the noise effect to make it look really vintage and Y2k.